Welcome to episode 77 of The Lowdown Show. I'm Neil Graham. This week I speak with Daryl Tearne, an industrial designer. And his career has spanned the Crocker motorcycle, America's first superbike, Erik Buell, and he tells a very good and very telling Erik Buell story, Zero motorcycles, and Mega Monster Jam RC toys. All this and more on this week's Lowdown. But first, a few words from those who make the show possible. The Lowdown Show is presented by advrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. With their new secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery. It's all built in. And eligible vehicle purchases are backed by up to $100,000 in protection. This is what modern car buying looks like. Get your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. Daryl, you and I reconnected again recently at a motorcycle race, which we might talk about that in a bit, but hadn't seen each other in years. And the last time I saw you, which is a long time ago, you had just left school and you were working on maybe the most bizarre motorcycle that any kid could work on. And I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. And it's this, and it's a futuristic Crocker. Now, for the people that don't know, what is a Crocker?
Yeah, so Crockers were made, well, they started making speedway bikes um, before the Second World War, and they were primarily single-cylinder speedway bikes that were run around dirt tracks. And Al Crocker was a motorcycle enthusiast and machinist, and after he got, through the speedway, he started making bikes to go after Harley Davidson. And he had two models, the small tank and the big tank. The small tank had a Hemi head configuration. And his policy at the time was if you're beaten by a Harley Davidson, you get your money back. So, so that was, and they were built in Los Angeles, California. They stopped producing motorcycles when the Second World War hit, and a lot of manufacturers had to get into supporting the war effort. A couple of folks that I ran into at a motorcycle show after graduating industrial design school had the rights to the name Crocker. They had acquired a lot of the original um, casting boxes to cast a lot of the parts in aluminum and in cast iron, etc. And they were building complete replicas of the small tank and big tank bikes for sale for kits. And then also because there were so few remaining Crockers, they were building parts and replacement parts for those who were trying to put together Crockers.
And let me jump
But
in
when
here.
I started,
Sorry, just to jump in, just for some context. I mean, they only made how many Crockers? Was it like 40 or something
yeah,
ridiculously?
it was less than 100 of the
Right.
small tank and
So
big
if you
tank.
don't know what a Crocker is, by all means, don't feel bad. And they were, some have called them the original superbike, and they were, overhead valve, um,
Yep.
for the age, very powerful, made by a guy in a garage in LA. And
Yep.
and incredibly coveted by collectors. I mean, Crockers go for ridiculous sums of money when they come up, which isn't very often because there's only a handful that exist. Um, so here you are, this kid, and then the guys that are building the replicas, all of a sudden, and of course that's that bike that I showed, and I'll bring it up again. But they had this idea that they would build a modern Crocker, and they
Yeah,
set
so
you they set you loose.
yeah, that's right. So they came to me. We started talking at the show, and they said, "Hey, we'd love to do a concept bike for this concourse d'elegance that's happening in Half Moon Bay, uh, close to San Francisco, and we'd love to show off a show bike to see what a modern Crocker would look like today for today." And as I was designing it, there was certain features from the original Crockers that they had sand casting bits going into tubular bits, and some of that design language was what I put throughout the chassis of this concept bike, and yeah, it was an 18-month project where you see here. This is just the concept sketch. From this, we did a full clay bike. We cast a lot of the components. We CNC'd the wheels. We modified some other parts, and yeah, we got to a finished prototype in about 18 months, and brought it across the country. Did a photo shoot on the salt flats, and then brought it to the concourse.
It's a pretty funky bike. I mean, looks both sort of retro and modern, which I presume was the goal.
Yep.
Round headlight, but it's a pretty spacey thing with the phone dial wheels. And did they sort of give you carte blanche? How much did they
Yeah,
meddle?
they didn't. They just kind of let me do my thing. So I was a young, early 20 something designer, just trying to get out there and make something wild and crazy, and that's sort of what I did. A couple of the cues, like the ram air intakes on the front air box on the tank, were going to be cast in aluminum, and yeah, I've always loved the single-sided swing arm hub centric steering on the front and also on the rear, so I threw that on there. And then at the time, there's a really cool retro headlight that we actually used a Crocker headlight, but then the internals was off of I want to say it was an Infinity Q45, but it was a multi-lens LED headlight. So it was, the whole design methodology was old meets new.
Now, is it safe to say that your work on that Crocker? Now, I guess we have to say that it didn't actually come to fruition. They never made any of these motorcycles beyond the prototype, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Just the prototype was made, and it's living in a hangar or bunker somewhere in LA as we speak.
Which is kind of
So
suitable, don't you think? Now, did that lead to your next motorcycle design gig, which is, of course, you worked for Buell, Eric Buell?
yeah, I think it's very much did.
And I just pulled up the
I
wrong thing. There we go.
Yeah, that's the Barracuda 2 prototype um, that I played a big part in the design of. I was brought in after the 1125R. That was, in my opinion, not the nicest looking machine. So
It
we
was
wanted,
it was hideous.
yeah, yeah, it was not, it was not the nicest looking machine. I can give a bit of a backstory on why, but
On why it's
it's
hideous?
well, there's some there anyway. Yeah, the headlights, the position of them, the overall look and feel and rake of the bike, there was a lot of things that were just not right about it. So um when I was brought in, the first project that I was worked on with Eric was to make this look like a super bike, and that's what we did. And got very close to production, but at the time Harley Davidson was um, they had just bought MV Agusta, and they were looking for ways to get back into just sort of make cuts. And there was a recession. It was 2008, so this bike in this form wasn't actually fully produced. But the 1190R was the next, the iteration of this bike.
So
I think this was on the
is this a sort of a styling exercise on the Rotax powered bike?
Yeah, this was a styling exercise, and we unfortunately we had to reuse the headlights that were homologated for the 1125R. But
Right.
I think it made the cover of Cycle World in
I
May
I have that.
2010.
I have it right there.
Yeah, and I think we did a as good a job as we could with what we were handed.
eBay has reinvented vehicle buying from click to curb. Everything's covered. It's all thanks to their new secure purchase. Ever try to buy a car and end up in a parking lot with a stranger in some blind trust? Or spend half the day at a dealership talking to pushy salespeople and signing paperwork? Or maybe, worst of all, waiting for hours at the DMV just to transfer the title? Well, that era is over. For years, eBay has been the go-to for gearheads, collectors, and do-it-yourselfers because whatever you're into, from classics to SUVs to trucks to imports, eBay's got it. And now with secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your next ride, it's where you can buy it, start to finish. Sellers and titles are verified, paperwork is handled by experts, and payments are traceable and digital. So you know exactly who you're dealing with and exactly what you're getting. Plus, you can finance, insure, and register your vehicle all in one place. No more hours at the dealership, no more trips to the DMV. Get your vehicle plates and paperwork shipped to your door, ready to drive. And it's all part of one seamless process, designed to feel as easy as buying anything else online. And eligible vehicles purchased on eBay are backed by up to $100,000 in purchase protection. Thinking about selling your ride? Secure purchase makes that simple too, because you know your buyer and their funds are verified. If you still own your car, the financing payoff is fully integrated. So you're not chasing paperwork or waiting on checks to clear. And with secure purchase, you get paid fast. And you're not going to be stuck chasing no-shows or answering the fifth, "Is it still available?" message. This is what modern car buying looks like. Skip the DMV, skip the sketchy meetups, buy it on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services LLC, an eBay subsidiary. The Lowdown Show is presented by adbrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. Let me ask you about working with Erik Buell, and I'm going to give you my thoughts. Now, I don't know your relationship with Erik Buell or the company at all, so you and I have never discussed this. So if I'm hanging you out here, forgive me. But I always thought Erik Buell, I mean, everybody loves Erik Buell because he's kind of the ultimate guy in a garage that built shit. And there's much to be admired in that. And as a guy who tinkers in my shed and takes forever to do minor things on my Ducati, you know, I have the utmost appreciation of that. But to me, Buell's never really worked as a motorcycle. I mean, he had great ideas. The underslung exhaust, history has proven that that's a wise thing, mass centralization. You know, he wasn't crazy or anything.
Mhm.
But it seemed, you know, radical geometry sport bikes with pushrod V twins, it never seemed sensical to me. What was your impression from the inside?
Yeah. Everything you said about Eric, I agree. Just a visionary. Um, Definitely wanted to go against the grain, as he did. The fuel in the frame and the oil in the swing arm and the push rod engine was something that was, he had to kind of live with and he never wanted to. That's
Right,
why the partnership with Rotex came along a little later,
right.
near the end there. But, you know, I have a bunch of, obviously I was doing a lot of sketches while I was there. And when we were working on the Barracuda 2, um, I did some sketches with dual rim disc front brakes. And at the time, they were racing the 1125R, and I was told by the race department that there was stacks of single rim discs in the paddock because they kept warping because the rotor was getting way too hot because it was a big, huge hunk of aluminum and big 8 piston caliper that was overheating.
Gee, eight
So
piston can.
I started sketching dual rim disc front brakes. And Eric, came in the studio and saw these sketches and said, "Daryl, don't ever sketch a dual rim disc front brake." And I said, I said, "Eric, why? You can lower your unsprung mass in the front wheel. You can make it more structural having the dual rim discs." It was taking in my opinion, it was taking his really cool radical idea to the next level. And he said to me, "Daryl, if we go to dual, they win."
No, I love design. Of course, Michael Ularic, who we both know well, is a good friend of mine, and I love just hearing him talk about design. You know, he's working on a project now, and he said that the thing that most vexes him is front fenders. Um,
Okay.
and one of my pet peeves on motorcycles are rear view mirrors because they never seem to be in the right spot, and then they always rotate. And you know, there are things, and those of us who love motorcycles and ride them, we have our things that we like and dislike. But from your experience as actually designing motorcycles, what is what are some things that are just hard to get right? Are there areas? I know if I'm making a documentary film, because that's my other life, I know there are things that every film you struggle with. It's the tempo and pacing and what is it in motorcycle design, do you think, that really sets the great ones from the simply acceptable ones? What sets the great apart?
For me, it's just really about the stance and the rake and the proportion and the mass concentration of form. Like I think um, there's there's certain bikes that you mentioned. We talked about the 1125R, and you look at that thing, and you just there's so many things that are off about the proportions of it
It's
that just
it's
don't feel
bulbous,
right.
where a motorcycle should never look bulbous.
Yeah, like the headlights too high up, it's bulbous. It's the tail's too low. I think generally for me, the thing you just got to get right first is just the stance and the proportion. And that goes for a street fighter, it should look very butchy, it should have big high shoulders and a stubby tail, and rider should look like he's on top of it. And for a super bike, it should look long, fast, and sleek. And I think so. Generally, just trying to nail that overall proportion, look, and feel is sort of the way I approach it. I'd say the tail sections are usually a little tricky. Like I personally don't ever ride with passengers, so I like to see a nice cowl on the rear. I think rear seats are that whole. I think for Michael's front fender, I think it's sort of the rear seat area and cowl area for me.
Right, right.
If I could pick a part that I've struggled with or struggle with um, in my designs, but and that that just that area in general is just sort of overlooked and overseen unless you look at the new MotoGP bikes with all the amazing aero that they're putting back there now, which we'll see, I'm sure, on street bikes in the next year or two. But anyway,
I mean, given the look of them with those mass dampers or whatever they are hanging out back, there should be enough room for at least a sandwich and a drink or something, I would hope. But
yeah,
here's another
yeah,
question. So I have this, and Michael and I have talked about this, and I'd love your opinion, which is that a lot of modern motorcycle design seems exceptionally busy. And I think of some of the Kiska designed KTM's,
yeah.
and they seem like and I had this conversation with someone who works in design, and they said you wouldn't really come to those forms if you were either sketching or designing in clay. But when you work on a computer,
Mm.
anything is possible. And they just seem so often those designs that somewhere in there's a purity of form, but they just kept going. What's your take on
Um,
modern design?
I think the ones that, I mean, the KTM stuff that has the edge styling, I don't hate. It's like, when I've talked to Michael about it, it's like when you're blocking out clay, it's kind of how you do it, and then it's the step before you make it look great. It's the blocked out kind of proportion before you give it curvature, etc. But the new Husqvarna stuff is the stuff that really feels like it's a kitchen appliance to me versus a motorcycle or a machine. Those are
Right.
the 401, I think it is, and the 701. Those really feel like they were done by an industrial designer and not someone who lives and breathes motorcycles and rides every day and rode dirt bikes as a kid and just has been around bikes their whole life. It's those ones bother me the most out of modern design. I
There's a
would
self-consciousness about them, isn't there? They seem
Yeah.
exceptionally self-conscious of being current and hip.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think some of the forms you would see on a like a modern sewing machine or a modern espresso machine, you know, not on the side of a fuel tank. So I but and I'm sure the marketing team and they had their reason for that look and feel why they wanted to go in that direction. Because as designers, we always have our marketing counterparts that are, also getting a say in look and feel. But in any case, those ones, especially to me, are off even more than that. And those are also done, I believe, in the Kiska studio in Austria.
The Lowdown Show is presented by advrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. No, I think you can tell a lot about a person by what motorcycle they actually own, and you know where I'm going with this. Even though I can't really do it right away. There we go. So we are looking at, what are we looking at? We're looking at a vintage Norton. Tell me about this bike.
Yeah, so it's a 1962 Featherbed race bike that I built from the frame and pieced together over many years, and had the pleasure of finally getting to see the checkered flag with it this summer. Um,
And that is for people if you've never built your own race bike, man, oh man, just to see a checkered flag, to see a start and a finish
yeah,
is truly triumphant, isn't it?
yeah, it is. And just to, this bike, to add to it, this is actually my fourth Norton. Runs in the family. My father also rode Nortons when they were new, and so I think I've been kind of around Norton culture for a lot of my life. Um, but and I have a 74 850 that I ride around Toronto as well. That's my actual daily uh, daily rider when I am riding on the street, which isn't that often anymore. But yeah, no, it's I have a goal to get into the 220s at Shannonville. Right now, I'm lapping a little too high, so I need to get some time out of it. I'm losing a lot of a lot in the corners. I just need to throw it in a little bit more with confidence. But yeah, no, anyway, it's like I say, it's my goal was to see the checkered flag this summer, and I got to do that, and I'm extremely grateful and happy that I made it happen.
Well, let's talk about let's talk about the Norton as a design piece. And there's a lot of enthusiasts, especially enthusiasts of a certain age, who feel that every modern motorcycle is sort of gone to hell, where that beautiful straight line, and of course you can see it on this Norton now, which is, and for those that are not watching this, it's a classic featherbed frame with, I believe, a Commando engine or a Commando spec engine with a big aluminum fuel tank that looks about 8 feet long and a seat which looks about 8 inches long. So that's kind of the aesthetic, and a little nose fairing and clip-ons and a drum brake, just as the Queen and God intended. Now, but back to my point, there's a lot of enthusiasts that feel that straight line from the tank to the seat is just how a motorcycle should look. Whereas the modern motorcycle, of course, is a triangular device where the headstock will run down on an angle and typically go down to where the swing arm is.
Yep.
But a lot of people just can't fathom that. Now, where do you sit on that? Do you think it's almost like, think of a guitar. When I see a nice, a nice Gibson, like a Les Paul or something, to me that looks like a guitar. And then when I see something that might be carbon fiber or some sort of futuristic shape, it just doesn't look right to me. So where do you sit on that?
Well, I have a I have a 94 gold top Les Paul on the wall behind
Well,
me
I
over
think I know.
there.
You
So
think you answered the question, didn't you?
but in any case, yeah, no, for me, the proportions of this bike are pretty much bang on. Like I am gonna I'm getting a 3 gallon sprint tank over the winter just to, I was having issues with this tank, so this one's gonna go on the shelf. And even going to that smaller tank kind of ruins the look a little bit because again, like the mass concentration, I talked about mass concentration of form earlier, and for this bike, having it in the tank and your eye go to the front fairing is really important, at least for me, for the proportions of the bike. But and you don't even want to see the tail or anything else back in the back. If I was to sketch this, I would just be doing very, very light lines on the tail and the rest of the back of the bike because that doesn't even visually matter to me. It's all about the tank and the front end. But in any case, yeah, like I say, I got Gibson Les Pauls. Own those as well, and I really do have more classic taste than the modern stuff for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's bizarre. The guitar industry, excuse me, the guitar industry is odd. It's if the guitar industry, the mainstream guitar industry, were transferred sort of to motorcycles, we'd all be buying vintage Bonnevilles and BSAs, and because it seems like everything is a reissue of something that was made 60 years ago, and it seems like the consumer will not allow a modern guitar, will they? And not in great
Yeah.
numbers.
No, and I think you see the same is true with the 916 and then the 1098. right? Like Pierre came in and did the 999, and no one, like, it was, they went to a double-sided swing arm, they went to stacked headlights, they did. I think the amount of people that just couldn't wrap their head around what Pierre Terreblanche did on the 999. I'm hoping I'm getting his name right, but
You are.
it um yeah, it was just too radical. It's too modern, especially for the Ducati nameplate. So the 1098, they went right back to the 916, the same similar headlights over the intakes, very simple square forms, and again, I think I owned a Ducati 848, which was the 1098 was too much bike for me, but I track rode that 848 for the longest time, and I loved it because the 916 was just um, you know, too high a maintenance machine for well, I shouldn't say that because I have the Norton, but anyway, I wanted something that I could just twist and go on. That's why I had the 848 Evo for over a decade.
Every Norton owner is an apologist, and you just prove that you are a Norton owner by apologizing for its woeful reliability. Like, I had Nortons and I went to Ducatis, and Ducatis compared to Nortons, they're like Hondas. Now your career took quite a swing. You went from motorcycles to doing things like this. Now the 8-year-old in me would think you've got the best job in the world. Why can't I figure this out? There we go. Now, this is Monster Jam's Mega Gravedigger. And I knew about Gravedigger. I didn't know there was a Mega Gravedigger. Oh, okay, come on back here, baby. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So how do you get into the toy design racket?
Yeah, it was actually through motorcycle design in a weird, odd way. I worked with a gentleman named Robert O'Brien. He's also was a member of the VRA. He's very fast on a Honda Hawk. But anyway, he went into toy design. He also dabbled in motorcycle design. He did some stuff with Glenn Kerr um, back in the oh 05, oh 06, oh 07 time frame. But anyway, he was in this toy business or toy company named Spin Master, and when Buell closed shop, my then wife and I, we wanted to settle down and start a family, and motorcycle design is not really the gig for that,
No,
unless you're going to just
certainly not
do,
in North America. No.
yeah, not in Toronto, which is where her, family is, and mine is close by as well. So Spin Master was the ticket, and it allowed me to make. Now I'm making toys for young boys and girls, and instead of making toys for older kids. So I think there is still a parallel. I'm still making toys. So the design part of it's still there. It's still fun. We can still innovate, and the fun part is Christmas comes every year, and we're looking for that next new big hit every year. So, um, and I will say the one thing with the toy business is the speed of it is keeps it very interesting because Christmas comes every year and holiday seasons every year. So that part's exciting. And yeah, I worked doing RC for quite a long time, like that Mega Gravedigger you saw there. So doing all sorts of RC Monster Jam vehicles and all the old Air Hog stuff. I worked on quite a bit. The new gig is actually I'm the design director of the new brand group at the company. So our mandate's to come up with the next big brand from scratch, and we don't really have any licenses to lean on with that. So it's we're
This is not products, but explain to me what that means. What a new brand
yeah,
idea is.
so it is products, but we're basically being tasked to come up with the next I don't know, Cabbage Patch Kids or Cabbage Patch Dolls
Right.
line of branded products, but we don't have that to lean on. We have to just come up with it from cool new magic tricks, or you name it, a cool new way to fly something, or um, a new type of material innovation, a new way to play a game. So we're kind of like floating in out in the ocean looking for the next big thing, and hopefully we hit it.
So how do you design for kids? Because obviously you may be childish, Daryl, but you're not a child anymore. And no one's more childish than I am, of course. But I'm not 8 or 10 or whatever your target group is. So how do you know what kids are into? And I think a pertinence today is that these things, of course, are everything. And I'm holding up my phone for those that are listening. So how do you make things that exist in the physical world that kids play with, and in an era when everything is seemingly digital? I mean, is that something hard to get your head around?
It's getting it's getting harder. Kids are definitely on screens more than ever, but there's also kids still want to play with toys, with physical toys, and I don't see that ever changing. And there's certain age of I'm obviously more inclined to design for boys. Grew up as have boys. My wife and I have 3 sons, so I know how they play. I know what they want to play with, and then overlaying cool tech is one way to look at it, or overlaying an old toy trick that worked in the past with a new form factor. But you know, um, the thing that gets me going and gets me out of bed and gets me to the office every day is we could come up with the next biggest toy that no one's ever seen before, and that's sort of our mandate right now with this new gig and my team's mandate. And um, yeah, it's quite exciting. It's really fun work, and like I say, it's a much faster pace than motorcycle design, which can be a it's almost 3-year process from sketch to the rolling off the production line. So I like the speed of it, and it just keeps me interested. To answer your question about how do I know what they like, I think kids have always played almost the same way. Um, you know, with remote control, it's been the same for 25 years. It's just how do you do something new and exciting on RC? How do you do something new and exciting with a flying toy or a drone? For girls, how do you do something more fashionable or more cute and whimsical? But the other thing we look for quite a bit is what's the magic trick? Like, where's that little magic hook? Um, so yeah, it's
What do you
different, but
what do you mean by magic hook? You mean what do you mean?
so I mean, I can use an example of a previous toy line that we did called purse pets, and they were these purses that had characters on them with real blinking eyes, and they made real sound effects. When at first glance, it would look just like a normal purse, but as you kind of zoom in, all of a sudden you notice, oh my gosh, it's actually a unicorn that's making sounds. So I don't know if that really answers your question,
So
but
it's exactly like you buy a Ducati and then you find out about its maintenance requirements. There's
exactly.
that kicker
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that comes along and hits you
Or
in the back of the head.
yeah, or like you had up the Mega Gravedigger. When we got the Monster Jam license, another company was doing their RC product for a long time, and it was just like, well, why don't we make the biggest one ever? What boy wouldn't want that? So we went off and did that, and it had its came with its laundry list of challenges to get it to, and we had a certain price point we had to hit. But it's fun. It's been a good journey. I'm really enjoying the toy business because I've been in it for. I think it's been a pretty even split of half of my career has been in motorcycle and half's been in toy. Maybe a little bit more than half now in toy.
So earlier on, Daryl, in this conversation, we started off by talking about Crocker motorcycles, and I've actually seen a Crocker. I knew a guy who had one in Eastern Ontario, and was always angling to take it for a spin, but it never happened. But a lot of our conversation, we talked about guitars and how guitar design is very traditional. But there's a connection between guitars and Crockers that you're going to tell us about.
Yeah. So Paul Bigsby was Al Crocker's main pattern maker. He did all the patterns for the castings out of aluminum or iron. And Paul Bigsby went on to make the first whammy bars. So one of the little side projects we had while I was at Crocker was Toronto guitar maker, Alistair Miller, did a one-off custom Paul Bigsby tribute guitar, which one of the owners, I believe, still owns and has. And we were going to produce more that never ended up happening, but it's just a really nice connection that proves to show that motorcycles and guitars sort of live in a similar zeitgeist.
eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. Ever try to buy a car online and end up in a parking lot with a stranger and some blind trust? Well, that era is over. Now, with secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery. It's all built in. This is the modern way to buy your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. Thank you for listening to The Lowdown Show.